do what thou wilt, shall be the whole of the law. Again, this is Flint Gunner Wright, the War Engine, aka Metatron. So my art here is Metatron. I don't know if you can see it that well. Boom, boom, boom. Anyways, haven't done any videos in a long time, so went into a little of my past in the last one. Also connecting that to what's going on in Iran right now. It's interesting because if you're a Sirius Thelemite and you decide to join the orders and really look into the more serious works, yeah, it could be very interesting. You know, I was born in '83, born in Langley, grew up, you know, on military bases, and you know, even after that, you know, always my dad, police officer, so always, and SWAT team, all that stuff. So always had that type of military environment around me, and being born with a name like Flint Gunner Wright, yeah, kind of that stuff was magnetic, whether it be through Boy Scouts or, you know, other various things. But anyways, so 9/11 happened. I believe I was in senior year. Maybe it was the year before senior, something like that. Yeah, I think it was senior year that happened in September. And that kind of, well, I already thought I was going into the military, even though I didn't want to do it immediately because I was big into the goth culture scene, and my dad was like, you know, I was wearing black lipstick, things like that. My dad was not too happy about that compared to his 1980s military experience. He thought I would just be like destroyed, saw as gay and destroyed. So anyways, but I've been studying Thelema since I was like 10 or 11, and already in contact with AA. Did my AA questions, and that was from the Cancernarius in London. Never heard back from them. From there, I started with another group, now known as the Paul Rivoli group. Did that for a number of years. Yeah, so I started with the OTO and William Blake Oasis. Now the interesting thing is this is like the DC OTO, and as you might imagine, there was a huge, I guess you could say, government connection there at the time, especially after 9/11. You know, the initiations I took, first couple was actually done at the house of a member who was retired. Her and her husband was retired Air Force officers, and then after that went into the civilian sector working at the Pentagon. So I told him how hardcore I was wanting to join the military due to all this, but by the time I was initiating the OTO, the war in Iraq had already started, and that kind of threw a whole wrench in everything from a lot of people's perspective. And the high-end intelligence of America, they kind of convinced me this was a bad idea, not because why I wanted to do it or anything like that, but the way that America was fighting in Iraq, was starting a civil war. And then, as I told you in my last episode, at Otakon, I met who would be a very good friend even to now, who was a hermit in the OTO even back then in 2005, 2006. You know, he was already there in Iraq. His group was actually responsible for interrogating Saddam Hussein when he was captured over there. He was a part of that, so he was high level intelligence as well. and even before 9/11, he was in Saudi Arabia hunting down Al Qaeda. Um, but it's very interesting because when you join a group like that, you it's supposed to be a Templar group, and sometimes things are not as you imagine, or not as you thought would be. So you learn that good and evil does not exist on one side or the other, but the hearts of man. So you really have to judge where God is by what is in the heart of your leaders, not by what religion they follow, whether it be Christianity or Islam. If you look at the history of the Knights of Templar, what was it? Muhammad died in the late 600s. The Crusades started, I think, right around 993 AD, roughly. Give or take a couple decades. So that only allowed 300 years for Islam to develop from Judaism and Christianity. So they still had a very firm foundation on both of those. And there's beliefs that the Knights of Templar was not a purely Christian group, but was a holy group made up by both Christians and Muslims trying to make peace in the Middle East. And that's the reason why the Catholics, the Pope, killed de Molay, Friday the 13th, 1314. I forget if that's the date he was killed or that his arrest date was, one or the other. Actually, I'll forget. There's different stories that say one or the other. But anyways, this was a mujahideen, or a holy group. And, whether you were Christian or Muslim or Jew, it just depended on what was in your heart and what you were trying to do. And the OTO is a Thelemic organization, but at the end of the day, we're a holy organization. And that rings true as well. So, also ironically, I was at that time very seriously dating another OTO member who grew up in Cairo because her parents were involved in, I don't know, some government organization that existed over there. Who's to say what it was is anybody's guess, really. State Department, CIA, something else. It really didn't matter. But it was an interesting view on things to see it from someone I almost married, and hearing about her growing up in Cairo, and also she was a diehard Thelemite too. And then there was another girl I was dating at that time whose father was some Air Force general. It was always in the Middle East, but we were doing a lot of drugs and having sex and partying a lot. She was not a Thelemite, but it was very interesting to go to, I don't know if that was Alexandria, but right outside D.C., and stay with her in her little compound. And she had this little mini White House all to herself that we were doing heroin. There was fucking private security or maybe government security outside, and I was like, oh shit, not that I brought a lot of drugs there, it was just enough for us to do that weekend. I wasn't like selling it or anything, but it was kind of scary for me as like a 20, 21, 22-year-old. So, interesting time. And I was doing a lot of other shit with my music at the time too, doing raves around Roanoke and Salem, Virginia, where I was from, before I decided to make that move up to Newark, New Jersey, the city with the highest Muslims in America. And I worked at the Dish Network International Call Center. And when I moved there, I was dating another OTO girl, very beautiful, very smart, still a part of the Thelema organization. I wouldn't say OTO, but yeah, she was still, I consider, a good friend. But yeah, unlike me, she was not into hard drugs. Very smart of her. Very dumb of me. But, different life experiences cause these things. I grew up in Salem, Virginia, where Oxycontin was easier to get than a six-pack of beer. So she grew up in Eastern Europe. Things were very different. So, and anyways, very different perception of life, but she was definitely a big help on getting up to New York City and Jersey. Big, yeah. So, yeah. So, anyways, kind of a little history about me and my beginning years at Thelema. I guess there's even more beginning years before that. That's just me solo. But that's how I kind of became a part of really the OTOs, the big group that transformed my learning and experience. The AA, I dropped out of the Rivali AA due to, even though my teacher was great, her teacher was Rivali, and I always heard bad stuff about Wasserman and the OTO through her from him, and she was like, I don't know if this is true or not, but he always says this stuff and wants me to kind of encourage you to step away from the OTO, and I didn't want to hear any of that, and eventually led me to step away from them. And then later I even stepped away from the OTO for a bit. I didn't resign or anything like that, but just because being a part of the Temple of Thelema caused another issue, and I was going to all these to learn and have friendships and all that stuff, and a lot of these various groups didn't want us to be friends with other Thelemites of the other groups, even though they were part of the same group, like the OTO. It was very weird. And at one point I got a new girlfriend, not a part of Thelema, very big in the goth and rave scene that I was a part of, and that led me to step away for many years a part of those groups, even though I continued to practice Thelema on my own, in my own way, but it was not as serious as if I was a part of these groups. So it had its downfalls for sure. Anyways, be sure to study this as much as possible, your book of the law, and love is the law. Love under will.